So now we're going to look at some real examples of regional stories to help you discover the kind of stories that you may have right under your nose that would be of interest to the regional and local media. So starting with this story, which was essentially around a launch of a new piece of medical equipment. So for this story, if you can see in the picture, it's actually a CT scanner. So it was a really nice picture where we'd got the director of the hospital and the local mayor who we'd invited along to the launch peering through the scanner. So it makes a great picture. And because it's an investment in the hospital, which will help patients in that community, that's what gave it the legs of a regional story. So the next story here, Julie drops in to open kids' clinic at hospital. So Julie drops in to open kids' clinic at hospital. Now, you might be watching this tutorial and thinking, that's great, but who's Julie? So a little bit of context. She is known in the region, in the UK, and the region is Manchester, because she is a footballer's wife and she also has her own health food business. So she's what we'd say is, more than just a wag. She's actually got her own business, and she was invited to the launch of a new paediatric or children's unit at a private hospital, and her she had strong links with the hospital because her daughter had been there, so she actually had a real passion for the hospital and was very keen to be involved in the opening. And this was actually done on a very small budget, this story, because if you can see, there's a very friendly looking bearded fellow, and that was our Santa for the day. And because it was a children's unit, we decided on the idea on having a Christmas launch and the theme of a Santa's grotto. So essentially, the children who were staying at the hospital, those who consented, whose parents consented to have their pictures in the media, they came into the grotto and they sat on Santa's knee, got a present, and just had a really nice time. And the media love those kind of heartwarming stories, especially if they include, young children, because it's just the media loves young children, they love animals, they love those kind of interesting, heartwarming stories. So it really played into those important factors. There was the human interest. It was relevant to that area because it was a Manchester story. And actually, if you look into the copy, and it might be small for you to make out, but essentially, it was a little bit of the journalist adding their little take on the launch. But a lot of it was the print ready copy that they lifted from to finalise the story. So again, it's my point about make it print ready to make it easier for the journalist, because if it's easier for the journalist, they're more likely to cover your story, which is great news for you. So that's an example of a localised regional launch that got real interest in the media because it also had a known face, and it was that perfect recipe for a great story where it had children involved, it was feel good, it was around the time of Christmas, and beyond actually paying for a few presents and getting some decorations, it really wasn't a huge investment, but it did give a great PR return. Okay, so a quite different story now, and this story here is actually, again, it's a regional story, that's a business story, which might be relevant to a lot of you. And essentially, the story is about the partnership between a US and a UK company, and the UK company in question is a sign manufacturer based in Nottingham. So the story was about them forging the alliance. They were a really well established company in Nottingham, in that, as you can see from the title, the firm was founded in 1791. So there's a lot of heritage there. There's a lot of history embedded in the community. So even though it's a business story, if you can see by bringing in some context around how old the company is and what this means, it gives you a localized story. So think about, for your business, think about partnerships, think about affiliations, think about new business developments that will work for your local and regional media. And this story, in fact, was one of those relatively rare occasions where the journalist not only covers the story, but they did an interview because they wanted some more information, and they also sent around a photographer to take their own pictures. So it was PR magic for us because they'd invested time to make the story right for them. So that was, a complete bonus. So yeah, think about the business stories and think about the kind of facts you can offer them. And we're going to talk obviously more about the kind of stories and how to pitch them to the media. Okay, so this story is actually, if you look at the story to the left, not the Richmond Business Awards, but actually the businesses must focus on a vision. And you don't need to see a lot of the copy. I see it's obscured, but the point of the story was essentially my client, who is an executive coach, giving a call to action to local businesses saying that to become a bigger player, to become a bigger business, you need to act that way and you need to think long term, you need to create a vision for the future. So that was, of course, a great business story because it was a call to action piece. It was asking for people to make a change. It was urging businesses to do something. So if you see there's not a new product, there's not a new service, it's an advice piece, but because it's focused to that area and the area from which the client comes from, it was relevant. Whereas if it was a story about, a client based in London urging businesses in Manchester to do something, it wouldn't really be relevant because it's too tenuous. You could pick any place in the country or any place in the world and expect to pitch a story and it wouldn't work. But because the executive coach, because the client was from that locality and she was urging local businesses in her area to do something, it was all the more strong as a story. Okay, so quite a different story now, and this was actually a new product launch. So it's in the Guardian series, which is the local papers within the Guardian group, and it says Leytonstone man, so that's where he's from, sets up new search engine to support world sanitation projects. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but you can see the gist. And actually, that was a lot of my content that was used, and they used my headline and added a little bit more information to it. But essentially, he's a local guy doing great things. So not only is he launching a new search engine, but it's going to help sanitation projects around the world. So why would that not be a story? Why would the local paper not jump at this story? And just to give you a little bit of background, it started with The Guardian, but then London Live, the TV station, actually went on to interview my client after seeing the story in The Guardian. So it just goes to show that sometimes you can get a lot of mileage out of your stories if you position them correctly, because journalists often look at other publications to see what's out there, to see what's hot, to see what stories are of interest. So do think about how your story can have legs, and also it's just, hopefully a positive that your story can run and run if it's pitched right. Okay, so here is a case study, and this was in a Scottish regional publication, and you can see the title, Wonder Diet That's Helping Us Win Battle with Diabetes. So this was a case study of a couple who had both been diagnosed with diabetes, and disclaimer here, don't do this at home, of course, speak to your clinician, but essentially they were advised by their clinician, who was a dietitian also, that they should go on a specific liquid diet which helped them actually manage their diabetes. So that's a really relevant story because it's human interest, it's relevant, it's health related, it's a pertinent topic, and they were from that area in Scotland which the paper covers. So again, that's the reason why it was of interest to them. So it might not have been a national story, and the same with all these stories that I'm mentioning here. They're not quite strong enough or groundbreaking enough or world firsts or country firsts to become national, but they absolutely had their place locally and regionally. Okay, so this is a really nice, heartwarming local story. So, Wellbeing Charity gets £2,000 boost for funds. So, well, it's straightforward. So, this charity received £2,000 being a runner up in a competition. So, there's a little bit in the copy about the charity itself and what they do and why it was set up. But also, the headline of the story was that it's a charity that's done good. It's a local charity that's done well. They were runner up in a competition, and as a result, they've received a cash sum. So again, it's a really nice story. So think about in your business. It's what I mentioned previously. Have you won an award? Have you been commended? Are you a runner up? Have you achieved something notable? Because if you have, that is potentially a local or regional story because they love to showcase businesses doing well. And last but not least, a survey based story. So, this is a hospital story where it says patients score hospital 98.8%, and that was for service, that was for their patient satisfaction results. So, this was actually an internal survey. So, it goes to show, and it didn't have huge numbers, so it goes to show that for local and regional, unlike national, you don't have to have a survey of 2,000 people for it to be of relevance to the media. For a local or regional story, it's good enough to have a smaller sample of maybe 100, maybe less than 100 if it's qualitative. So you can actually still get column inches if you go down that route. So this was essentially a patient satisfaction survey. So it's when patients actually are discharged from the hospital and they just, they scribble down their thoughts and tick the boxes on how they feel the treatment or their stay in the hospital went. And the hospital did quite well from it. So they got a 98.8% score from patients. So the headline was, that this hospital has received the ultimate accolade from the people that matter the most, the hospital's patients. So that was the way it was positioned, and it was strong enough. So that's where a survey can work in your advantage. So if, for example, you do a customer satisfaction survey and it's very positive, that might well be a story that can get you into the local media or the regional media. So have a think, do look over these examples and have a think about what stories you have that fit the criteria potentially for a local or a regional story.